When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply. At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. It's such a wonderful day to be with you and to help us do what we always do, turn down the noise of the news cycle, get to the things that really matter so we get the good information that helps us understand and discern the times we live in. Going to do a few things a little different today. We've been really, really heavy on domestic news, especially with all the Trump stuff. So we're going to take some time, go around the world, a couple different countries, some stories you need to be following and need to be aware of. We'll take care of that. Tyler Curtis on the program, returning, another one of our great Young Voices contributor. He's also a loan officer at a bank. We're going to talk about housing, how young people, especially in the younger working generations and dispirited people groups, are having trouble getting housing loans now because of the rising interest rates and the economy and things that are going on. But also those high interest rates means some folks like me that own homes kind of going to be a little squirrely about selling them. Things like housing cross a lot of streams, like economics, like culture, like pay and labor and real inflation and monetary inflation and all sorts of things. When you build a house, it takes 26 trades to build that house. Big economic indicators, plus something very practical for what most people is their most valuable possession they own, their home. I'm going to talk to Tyler Curtis on the program about that today. But first, okay, we've been real domestic heavy on the show recently. That's something we want to try to stay balanced. Let's get overseas and get some news from things that are going over from wherever you are to wherever this stuff's happening. Let's talk about it a little bit, especially with the news in our national news cycle being all Trump all the time right now. Let's go see what's going on in the other parts of the world. Let's go.
From wherever you are to way over there, this is news from over yonder. Niger.
Things are getting bad in West Africa. We've talked about this on the program before. You have to pay attention to international news because there's a lot of cross streams that are meeting in the country of Niger right now. This has Russia's fingerprints all over it. In fact, when this coup went down, some of the coup protesters that were supporting the new military junta that took over was marching with Russian flags. We already know Russia is very engaged in Mali next door. Burkina Faso, the next country over, has also had a lot of Wagner and Russian influence going on. This is all because of so much Western influence in Niger and neighboring Nigeria, which has long been the power in Western Africa. There's a lot of cross streams. So things like international diplomacy, things like the war in Ukraine, that all spills over to this. We've talked for years now about the problems in Africa and how world powers like Russia, like China, are moving into Africa and trying to exert influence, and the United States is not really paying really close attention to these sorts of things. Now, Niger was a colonial power under France, and we all know the long and sordid history of colonial French countries and how almost all of them are a total mess nowadays. We can rehash that history later, but things are getting bad in Niger. Now, the U.S., the U.K., other countries are pulling their embassy staff out. The ruling coup folks, who was actually the leader of this thing, was the head of the former president's bodyguards of all things. We're not exactly sure how they're going to fall on this, but the Russian influence is very concerning. This whole region can get ugly in a big hurry, and underneath all of this too, going back to the Ukraine-Russia war again, now that the grain shipments are getting interrupted again, you're looking at war, you're looking at possible famine. There's a lot of bad going on in West Africa, and we need to pay attention to it. Keep your eye out for Niger. Make sure you're following overseas outlets. Put a little bookmark in your news. Keep an eye on this thing. This thing has simmered for years. It looks like it may be flaring up.
Pakistan.
Let's go over to Pakistan. A horrible bombing at a political rally killed at least 63 people. They think it was a homicide bombing. Elements of the Pakistan Taliban have taken credit for this. This is all under the backdrop of whether or not they're going to be having elections. Imran Khan, the former prime minister who was arrested himself earlier, has been involved in some of this. He's saying that the current Pakistan military, and the military is the ruling power in Pakistan, don't have any qualms about that. They are petrified of elections. There's a lot of moving parts here. This is very complicated, but when you're having major bombings like this in Pakistan, remember, they've got nukes. This is a country you got to pay attention to. We've kind of forgotten about it in the U.S. news media since we pulled out of Afghanistan. This is still a volatile region. We need to pay attention to what's happening on it. Keep an eye out going forward, especially as the elections start coming forward, and see if they actually have them. In the middle of all this, by the way, now you got the Taliban, which is a little different, but kind of the same strand as the Afghanistan Taliban that we've all been dealing with. You've got China going into Afghanistan. You've got other countries going to Afghanistan for the raw earth minerals. Remember, we've been talking about those things. Keep an eye on this region. Pakistan needs to be stable, and it looks like they're having a little trouble maintaining that stability.
Ukraine.
I already mentioned Ukraine. Big development over the weekend was Ukraine has developed suicide drones to the point that they can accurately target things deep into Russia. They hit some military targets in Moscow City, which is a financial district just outside of Moscow by about 2 or 3 miles. They hit a couple military targets. Russia also claims that since then there's been other attacks and have said they have shot down some Ukrainian drones. You can take that for a grain of salt because it's hard to tell what Russia is and isn't lying about. In retaliation for this, of course, Russia has started attacking the grain ports. They pulled out of the grain agreement. They had to let grain ship all over the world out of Ukraine, and they have gone back to what they've been doing all along. They are attacking civilians, cities, people. Ukraine hit a military target. Russia responds by killing more civilians. Be very careful of all the propaganda going on about this with Ukraine attacked Russia. Russia has been at war with Ukraine in the Crimea for over 8 years, and the current invasion for over 560 days now. They invaded Ukraine, a sovereign country. This is all Russia's fault. There's no version of this where Ukraine should have been invaded by Russia. You can talk about all the politics you want, NATO, whatever. Russia didn't have to invade Ukraine. They chose to. Now Ukraine has taken the fight to them. Think of this more like the Doolittle raid in World War II. It didn't really do any damage, but psychologically it was a huge blow. Plus the fact that Ukraine showed that not only can they attack in Russia, they can do it with a whole lot of precision, hitting the exact office in a skyscraper building that contained a supposedly semi-secret, depending on which version you want to believe, government unit of the Russian military and intelligence apparatus. That's very impressive. Obviously, they got help from Western countries on some of that, but it was a precise military strike. And Putin's doing what he's always doing, killing civilians in retaliation. Who the good guys and the bad guys here is very, very clear. Ignore the propaganda, ignore the stuff coming out of the otherwise. That does not mean we can't be discerning and hold accountability for the mountains of money we're shipping into Ukraine. There needs to be accountability there. Doesn't mean Ukraine's a squeaky clean country, but all those things fall underneath the fact that there's a good guy and a bad guy here. Russia cannot invade countries, and Ukraine needs to win this war, and we should continue to support them.
Mexico.
Go down to Mexico. This is an interesting headline to keep in mind because it crosses, again, these stories cross streams into what's going on domestically. You want to talk about immigration. You want to talk about the border crisis. You want to talk about labor and migrant labor. Headline out of Reuters, remittances. That's the money that people outside of Mexico go and earn and then send back home to friends, family, or whatever in Mexico from abroad. Totaled $5.5 billion in June, reading from Reuters here, just under the all-time high reached this month, but dampened in real terms by the sharp appreciation of the peso against the dollar. The peso strengthened more than 15% versus the dollar in June of 2022 to June of 2023, so in the last year, boasted by higher interest rates and nearshoring, that's in quotes, or the relocation of manufacturing largely from Asia to the area. The appreciation has caused some Mexican communities who rely heavily on remittances sent from the United States to clamp down on spending. Meanwhile, some workers in the U.S. have tried to send more cash home to cushion the impact. With the June increases in remittances, Mexico reached a quarterly record $16.3 billion. Let me repeat that number. That's the money people are earning outside of Mexico, sending it back, $16.3 billion, and broke a 12-month record of $61.2 billion. Mexican President AMLO said that Mexico is expected to rake in more than $60 billion this calendar year. In the first half of the year, remittances reached $30.2 million. However, the economic activity in the United States moderating, remittances to Mexico will likely slow in the coming quarters. What does that mean? Because you're talking about the border crisis, you're talking about immigration, you're talking about migrant workers. Most of the migrant workers are coming for one or two reasons, and those two reasons are often intertwined. They're human living conditions, they want a better life, and mostly economic reasons. A lot of times those intertwine, but the migrant workers that come and go back or come earn money and send back, the remittance makes that. So keep an eye on the fluctuation of things going on at the border. We've had things like the title came down, so we saw a bit of a drop. Now the migrations are coming back up again. Get past just the buzzword and the noise of what's going on the border and pay attention to things like this. There's patterns to this. There's patterns to why it peaks off and drops off. And remittances are a good indication of what's going on economically, which is an indicator of what might be coming or not coming going on down at the border.
United Kingdom.
Let's go over to the United Kingdom. They're going to put all the migrants on a barge. Now, they got a migrant problem over there. People coming across the channel, things like this. This has been a hot button issue for a while. We've been talking to our UK contributors, which we're hoping to get back on soon. There was the scheme back in the fall where they were going to ship them to Rwanda. That didn't go over very well. So now they're going to put them on a barge. Barge is a little bit misleading here. This is like a 3-story hotel building that they put on a floating barge. It's a 3-story building. Okay, this thing's huge. It's not like they're going to put them on the slave galley from Ben-Hur here. However, a lot of folks are really upset about this. They say it's inhumane. They say it's a fire trap, things like this. It's become a political hot potato for the Rishi Sunak government. Not to mention the fact that the Rishi Sunak government is still pretty unpopular, and somewhere here in the next year or so, they're going to have to figure out a way to have an election being super unpopular. This is not a prison ship. That's a little bit too strongly. Remember, these are migrants. Migrants, you're going to have to find somewhere to put them. This is not a luxury. You can look at the pictures. We're going to link to it in the Substack notes. You can make up your own mind. Remember when they're saying barge, the 3-story building, it looks a lot like any temporary housing you've ever seen. Your mileage may vary, but it's an interesting concept and what they're going to do with migration. But there's no good answer to the migration problems that the UK's having. UK's having a lot of economic issues right now. This one ain't helping.
Australia.
Well, sometimes we're wrong about stuff. Remember that story and those pictures going viral of space junk that washed up on the Australian beaches a while back? Most of us, including me, including some of our science experts we talked to, figured it was probably China just on, sheer mass of who put stuff up in space. And you're talking about Australia, China's usually a good culprit. Turns out we were wrong. We admit when we're wrong on this program. India. From the BBC, India has confirmed that an object that washed up on a Western Australian beach recently was one of its rockets. The giant metal dome was found on Greenhead Beach, about 250 clicks, that's 155 miles for those of you from Logan, north of Perth in mid-July, prompting speculations to its origin, but the Indian Space Agency spokesman told the BBC Monday it is from one of its polar satellite launch vehicles. Sudhir Kumar said that it would be up to Australia to decide what to do with the object. He did not comment further. His comments come after the Australian Space Agency on Wednesday said the object was most likely the third stage of a PSLV, which are used by India to launch satellites into low to mid-orbit. Countries often plan for debris from their launch to land in the oceans to prevent the damage to people and property. Dr. Alice Gorman, the space archaeologist. We have space archaeologists. How cool is that? Back to the piece. Space archaeologist and associate professor of Australia's Flinders University said that while there are often serial numbers on components, it's also possible to identify debris based on appearance. According to the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, there's another office you didn't know exists. I wonder if they're going to be in charge of the aliens invade. God help us. Countries are required to return any, quote, foreign space objects found in their territory to the owners. There's an interesting piece of international law we got to dig into. Dr. Gorman said there are many reasons why a country would want the debris back, such as missing analysis. In this case, however, she said there would be no benefit in India retrieving the option, and West Australia already indicated it would be happy to keep it. The state's premier, George Cook, suggested to local media that the object could be restored to the state museum alongside debris from NASA's Skylab, which was discovered in 1979. There you go. So sometimes we're wrong. Space debris. Y'all watch your heads out there.
Canada.
He's single, ladies. Shoot your shot. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his wife Sophie, has announced that they are separating. This comes as Trudeau's trying to figure out whether he's going to be able to stay in office or not. Let's go to Reuters on Wednesday. Trudeau and his wife Sophie Gregory Trudeau unexpectedly announced their separation, likely marking the end of their 18-year-long high-profile marriage. The separation is one of Trudeau's biggest personal crises, although insiders and political commentators said he wants to ride out the aftershocks. He's running again, said a source close to Trudeau, and when asked when the news of the separation might be prompting second thoughts, the source was not authorized to speak about the matter publicly. They never are. Trudeau said on an Instagram post that the couple took on the decision after, quote, many meaningful and difficult conversations. Understatement. His office said the two had signed a legal agreement and the couple would focus on raising their children jointly. The family will go on vacation together next week. That's going to be awkward. Trudeau, 51, had stressed the importance of family, and he and his wife were seen on campaign trails during elections when his children by his side after 3 successive wins starting in 2015. While the next election is only due by October 2025, Trudeau's campaign, by all accounts, will look very different. The shuffle was a political clearing of the deck, and it's his sort of personal clearing of the deck. He seems determined to stay on as leader of the Liberal Party, said Roderick Phillips, history professor at Ottawa's Carleton University. The shakeup and surveys of public opinion show voters are starting to tire of Trudeau, and after last week's cabinet reshuffle was designed to build on his core economic team in response to cost of living challenges that Canadians have grappled with for more than 2 years. At the height of the Canadian summer, when few people are paying attention, this was probably strategically timed to cast a new light on the cabinet shuffle, while several promising ministers received big promotion. Quote, this cabinet was likely made with a sensitivity to manage key files, while Trudeau spends more time focused on his family. Canada's got some economic issues going on. Their housing crisis is crazy. The house prices up there. We're going to have to get some of our Canadian friends back on the program. But there you go. Justin Trudeau back on the market.
News from over yonder.
And that's some of the things going on other parts of the world. We try to keep a balance. It's been a little domestic heavy, so we decided to do that. We'll keep doing it if you want to do it. Let us know if you like it. HeardTellShow@gmail.com. Find us on social media. Let us know what you think. We'll do more Heard Tell right after this.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
What makes for a great vacation? Depends on who you ask. Are you looking to get away or bring everyone together? Do you want to get outside and play or see a play at the plate? Fortunately, however you operate, I'm the destination you've been looking for. The name's Missouri, but you can call me Mo. And I have just one question. What's your MO? Come see me at visitmo.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Let's talk housing. Sure, you've heard tell that all over the news. Anytime there's economic news, they go to housing. We're going to talk about why we look at housing as that. A friend of ours returning, Tyler Curtis, Young Voices contributor, went to school out in Missouri. That's the show me state, so we don't have to worry about him trying to shine us on. He's one of these evil banking people. He knows about these loans and such. Tyler, how are you, my friend? Good to see you again.
I'm good. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back, Andrew.
Good. I dressed up for you. I wore my Proud Veteran Homeowners T-shirt for you that I got for, the low price of, I won't give the number away, but the price of my mortgage house. They gave me a free T-shirt. That's a good deal, right?
It's the
you
least
sign
they can
away
do.
a 30-year mortgage and you get a T-shirt. That's kind of it. We're joking, but the way they pitch mortgages nowadays, boy, they throw a lot of bells and whistles for you to sign away 30 years of your life, don't they?
And a lot of paperwork. By the end of it, you're going to have carpal tunnel. But what I like to tell clients is that it's short-term pain, but long-term gain.
Let's talk about that, because the time period's really the thing with it. I don't want to pick on the housing industry, because this is true for any loan industry. This is really true with cars now, where the average car has gone from 4 years to 5 years to almost 7 years now. Any kind of loan, the pitch on the business side is you talk about that low monthly payment and you de-emphasize that overall payment down the road. The reason that's really changing now is because mortgages have changed. When I bought my first house in the mid 2000s, 7.25% was a fantastic interest rate. I mean, you were doing backflips if you got 7.25%. Now it's gone down, it's come back up. Now the average is back around 7.25%, and people are freaking out. But the difference is not just the interest rate; it is the inflation. It's so much more expensive. Talk about those two things, because that really gets to the nut of what's going on with these loans and things, is how it's pitched. Not talking about that long term, but then when you start talking interest rate and inflation, that's where people are really hurting. And that's where it gets into the piece we're going to talk about, why people are starting to get priced out a little bit.
Yeah, there's just so much to go into. Like you said, with the inflation that we saw in the post-COVID era, where inflation was at 40-year highs, that made it harder for people to save money to afford their mortgage payment or to afford their down payment and closing costs. But then the prices of houses were going up too. Before the pandemic began, the median home price in the United States is about $380,000. That's still a lot of money, but now it's up to about $580,000, which is the rate of inflation for home prices is so much more than the rate of inflation for everything else. But yeah, you talk about affordability. I actually just saw blog post up last week. Someone was actually estimating based on median income. So you can look at how much of your income is going towards your mortgage payment. And it's at a 37-year high. Percentage of your income that's going to pay for your mortgage payment. For most people in America today, it's about 37%. So it really does not give you a lot of room to pay your other bills.
Yeah, Tyler Curtis joining us. Let's slow down before we get into your piece that you wrote for USA Today about this. There's a reason housing and housing buying and housing building and housing loans is such an economic indicator, because so many things cross their streams right there. I know from doing local radio back, we had builders on. They talk about there's 26 different trades that go into building one house. You think of the economic impact of that. That's not counting them going to all the different suppliers to get all their stuff. Then the loan guys like you come in and put together the financing for it, and that funds y'all's business. Talk about the fact we have to talk about housing, whether it's the housing shortage crisis or the housing debt crisis or people not being able to afford homes. So much of the economy, the cross streams meet at housing, don't they?
Well, they do. What's the most important thing? It's the most important part of anybody's budget is your shelter. But yeah, like you said, builders, there's so many different things that go into building a house. I think with the inflation that we've seen with the cost of construction has led to a decrease in the number of new houses being built. So we still have a population that's increasing. People still want to go out and buy houses. So the demand is still there, but the supply just isn't rising to meet it. That was a big issue. I remember talking to people, customers that wanted to build houses, and construction companies that wanted to help them build houses, but it was so difficult to find them at an affordable price because some of the supply issues that were going on during COVID. Everybody was talking about that, and there are just so many different components that you need to build a house, from lumber and steel and concrete. Well, steel if you had a much larger much larger residence. But plumbing supplies are just, and you can't finish one component of your house until the first component is done. So it's such an interconnected process. And so when you have this constriction of supply coupled with the Federal Reserve's inflationary policies and the federal government's fiscal inflationary policies, it just created this perfect storm where real estate, even though real estate values had been going up pretty steadily for decades, it was like a shot in the arm. It just went, if you look at a chart of median sales prices in the United States, it just went straight up because of, on the one hand, supply issues that were making it difficult to build new houses, and then demand issues where everybody wanted a house because interest rates were so low, and there just wasn't enough housing to meet that demand.
Yeah, Tyler Curtis joining us. You get into it in your piece. It's at USA Today. We're going to link to it. Make sure you read the whole thing for yourself. A lot of links in there you need to go through as well. You get into your piece, though. This has a compression effect on everything because it's not just people that can't afford to get new houses. People like you and me, we're both homeowners. My home value has gone up significantly the last 5 or 6 years. Very much, very well. The problem is, okay, I can sell my house. I'll make a good profit. But my interest rate on the next loan is going to be almost double what this interest rate would be. So again, talking about that long-term planning, not just that monthly interest rate, I'm going to lose a big chunk of that revenue I just gained just because the interest rate's higher. And that is keeping people from selling their homes or at least examining it. That has that compression effect because now you're talking about supply and demand. Now you're talking about people that could be buying other homes that aren't. This stuff all starts kind of stacking up on top of itself to make the problem worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at my piece to see the exact statistic, but I believe that the data now shows that at least in the first quarter of 2023, there are 40% fewer homes on the market than there were in 2019. Just a huge difference. I mean, just go check out your local community on Zillow and just look at the listings on there. It's a fraction of what it would have been just 2 or 3 years ago. But yeah, like you mentioned, some people that might want to move but would find it more expensive. I'm thinking of people that might be in their 60s or 70s. Their children have all moved out of the house and they want to downsize. They're probably thinking, why should I downsize when I could buy a house that's a lot less expensive, but my payment might be, assuming that they have a current mortgage, but their payment might be the same or even higher on a smaller, less nice house than they would if they just stayed put. And Realtor.com, Realtor.com is this big company, and they allow people to list their houses on there. They did a survey of current homeowners and asked them if they'd be interested in selling their houses right now. And the responses that they received are pretty interesting. They found that there was a substantial number of people that would like to sell their homes, but they felt like they were locked in because they were locked in with these really low interest rates on their current mortgages. It was actually going to be more expensive for them to move. So they just decided to stay put. So that's why we're seeing such a, like you said, this supply crunch, compression. Because there's a lot of people that would like to move and switch houses, either to upgrade or downgrade, but they feel like they can't. It would be a bad financial decision for them to trade their 3% interest rate for a 7% interest rate. And not only that, I mean, you can think about a situation where you've got 3% on a mortgage of $160,000. But if you want to go buy a similar house, 3-bed, 2-bath house, something like that, it might be priced at $200,000 today, and the interest rate is going to be higher. So there's just no incentive for you to move.
Yeah, Tyler Curtis joining us on Heard Tell. You talk about it in your piece, though. Part of that equation, too, when you're sitting down and talking to somebody for a home loan, You get into something that I don't think we talk about enough when we talk, because economy, usually you talk about like unemployment and inflation and maybe wages. What all wages aren't equal though. So you really get into a little bit what a real wage is and wage growth and those sorts of terminology. That's more of an econ heavy terminology. Just in a practical term though, people understand what that is, that, hey, I'm making the same money, but it doesn't go so far. Kind of bridge it, get out that Missouri S&T degree you got there, bridge that terminology for us, because that's an important concept for people to understand. Practical economics is something such as real wage growth, right?
Yeah, let's get our calculators. So I mean, people are making so much more money than they used to. Economists will use the term nominal, which just means that this is just the pure number. So I remember when I was in college, I worked at a minimum wage job, and at the time in Missouri, the minimum wage was $7.25. And now we're seeing people making advertisements. There's banners outside of fast food restaurants advertising, $14, $15 an hour. So this is more than double what I was making just 6 years ago. But it's not real. When we talk about real wages, what we mean is how far does that extra dollar actually take you? So if you're making $1,000 more a month at your job, it sounds really good. But if your bills are now $1,200 more than they used to, you're actually making less money in real terms. So that's just what we mean when we talk about the difference between nominal wages and real wages. So you might be making a lot more money just in pure numbers than you used to, but when your bills are so much higher, you're actually poorer than you used to be.
Yeah, Tyler Curtis joining us. So that brings us back to inflation. Everybody hears it on the news. They intuitively understand it like, oh, well, all of a sudden this is more expensive than it usually was. We understand through economics these things are cyclical. They're somewhat predictable. People knew at some point inflation was going to happen, and then you talk about cooling off and all those kind of things. Put it in a practical term. Again, I keep using that term because these are big concepts, but when you really think about it, it's stuff we do every day. You sit down with somebody buying a home and you're just talking through them with it. How much has inflation really affected these people? Because they're talking to you about their daily expenses. That's their job, and that's your job to work through those with them. You're talking to these people every day. What's inflation like from where you're sitting and hearing these people talk about it every day for the last year or so?
Yeah, I think the big thing is grocery bills. I know, from personal experience and also talking to people in my community. It's, you go to the grocery store, you go to Walmart, and you fill up your cart, and what used to be $50 is now $100. And that's sort of anecdotal, but food prices have gone up even faster than the overall inflation rate. So we just got the new inflation rate for June, just came out last week, I believe. Bureau of Labor Statistics just released it. Now, the year-over-year inflation rate has lowered dramatically down to 3%. But food prices are still up. I mean, bread, they released the inflation rate for bread, and year-over-year it was still about 13%. I remember when my wife and I were first married, this was just 6 years ago, we bought a loaf of bread for $1, and now we're paying $5 or $6 for a loaf of bread. So it is hurting people a lot. And the big thing is those larger expenses, your cars and your houses, because prices, we touched on that a little bit ago, but prices are still going up concurrently with interest rates. So, before, your interest rate may have been 3%. Now it's going to be 6 or 7%. But the price isn't coming down to meet it. It's still going up.
Tyler Curtis joining us. You touch on it in your piece because you're talking a lot about the younger homeowners. You've been one of those recently. Talk about any kind of financial planning whatsoever. Getting that first home is so vital because now you've got, in a short period of time, if you have a responsible loan, you have some equity. You have a building block to actually start building something substantial. And one of the reasons I think you're probably focusing on this, and rightly so, is for the younger workers, especially those in their prime years. You talk about millennials in the piece, so those in their 30s and 40s, they're real prime earning years. If you can't get that building block pretty early on, it's almost like you're chasing it and you're setting yourself back. And it's not that homeowning is for everybody, but for the people that can do it, that can build generational wealth. That can be a building block to something else. You always have equity. You can get other loans on it. It's just a flexibility piece that a lot of people need early in life. And if you don't have it into your 30s and 40s instead of having it into your 20s, that makes a giant change in your financial planning for your whole life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we talk about it a lot, especially investment advisors will talk about it a lot. Investing in real estate is the best way to build wealth because it's historically speaking, real estate values are always going up. And that's 100% true, but it's like anything else. It's sort of like investing in your health. There's a lot of short-term sacrifices that you'll have to make, but over the long term, it's going to be the best thing for you and your family. And it was hard. I mean, getting in that position where my wife and I were able to afford our first home, there were sacrifices that had to be made. But even in the short term, this is what I kind of want to tell if there are any young people listening. Even though a lot of the benefits are long term, we talk about building generational wealth. There's a lot of short term benefits too. I mean, if you just look at rental properties right now, what you'll be paying to rent an apartment or even a house. When my wife and I moved in, we got engaged and bought our first home in 2017. Her rent on her duplex was actually $100 more than what our mortgage was on our house, which was a little bit bigger than the place she was living. So yeah, there are short-term sacrifices you have to make to get there, but there are short-term benefits too.
Folks, if you've listened to the Heard Tell program, you've heard our friend Gabriella Hoffman, but you need to make sure you're checking out her podcast, District of Conservation. It's a podcast exploring the nuances of true conservation efforts from DC and beyond. From topic discussions to exclusive interviews with conservation and energy newsmakers, Gabriella keeps listeners appraised of the latest news stories while elevating important voices. Listen to District of Conservation on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are played. Folks, you've heard of Ethan Brown on the Heard Tell show a couple of different times, but if you're interested in learning about how to discuss things like climate change without all the politics and doom and gloom, head over to his podcast, The Sweaty Penguin. Sweaty Penguin is a late-night comedy-style climate podcast working to add nuance, critical thinking, humor, and hope to the climate conversation. They got over 100 episodes already, breaking down weekly news stories and specific topics, from the vanilla to the ADHD to the international accountability to orangutans. Yes, I know, it's a comedy thing, so just go with it. But each time, exploring different ways we can make progress on these issues while still helping the economy, health, security, and everything else we care about. Feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or excluded by today's climate change discourse? This is the podcast for you. Find The Sweaty Penguin wherever you get your podcasts or at www.thesweatypenguin.com. Tyler Curtis joining us. Okay, we got to talk about the bad side of this, though, because, again, I just told you I bought a house in the mid-2000s. I got really lucky. I was able to sell a house in the 2008-2009 period when that was really hard to do because we had the mortgage crisis and we had the housing bubble and all that. Especially for the young people you're talking about in your USA Today piece, we understand that, home mortgages and the financial, it's a competitive industry. There's less and less people. Corners start getting cut. Let's just be honest about this. So you talk about having to have down payments here. All of a sudden, well, we can figure out a way around those down payments. Well, no, you can really afford this if we do this. And there is a dark side to this industry that young people need to be aware of. Is like, hey, we can make you afford it on paper, but 2, 3, 4 years down the road, it's not going to look like that. And you get yourself in a bad situation. Where's that fine line between predatory lending and really competitive business? And how do young people kind of keep an eye out for that, especially in an uncertain economy where they're, like we just said, they're trying to get stability in an unstable economy and they're looking to do that. there's people out there that will take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure. There's, like you said, there are programs that will allow people to buy homes with you don't have to bring any money to the table. So even though you're going to have closing costs, and for those that don't know, closing costs are their fees and insurance premiums that you have to pay up front. About half of it is going to be your home insurance premium that you have to pay for the first 12 months, and then your taxes that are due on that property. And then the other half are going to be your origination and your appraisal fees and titling fees. But a lot of times you can get the seller of the property to pay those for you, especially if you pay a little bit higher price on the house that you're buying. But I think you're right, Andrew. There's because we're so ingrained in American society that owning a home is the American dream. And I think even though it is the American dream, we've sort of made it into a right instead of a privilege, something that people are entitled to. So the federal government has done so many things to make it easier for people to buy homes. And one of those is a loan program that is underwritten by the Federal Housing Administration. So this is a type of loan that maybe some people have heard of. It's called an FHA loan because of the Federal Housing Administration, but it allows people to purchase homes even if their payment can be, even if all of their debts can take up 50 to even 55% of their income. So you take your mortgage, all your other debt payments, add them up, and if it's even 54% of your gross monthly income, you can still buy that house. Is it responsible? That kind of depends actually on what your total income amount is. If you're making six figures and you're spending 55% of your monthly income on your bills, it's not as big a deal if you're making $30,000 a year and you're spending 55% of your monthly income. So I would say, I think you have to look at your own budget. If you're looking to buy a house, you have to be really honest with yourself about what you're able to afford. And don't go right up to that limit. If a lender says that you're pre-qualified up to X amount of dollars, just be really honest about, do you think that even if you can't afford it on paper, you can qualify for it? Just be honest with yourself about, do you really think that you can make all those payments?
Tyler Curtis joining us. Want to ask you, your piece in USA Today, you started out with the Federal Reserve. You just talked about it a little bit. A lot of this stuff is out of people's control. They can't, not just the economic cycles. There's so much regulation that goes into construction. There's so much regulation in the banking, both good and bad, that changes it. And that's also cyclical and politically motivated. People can't control a lot of stuff. They can't control the Federal Reserve setting rates. What can they control? Obviously, personal finance, the key word there is personal. It's not one size fits all. But what do you tell people, whether they're young, old, whatever? What is the biggest thing you can control when it comes to something like wanting to buy a home or something like this?
Yeah, I definitely understand. It's tough. You kind of just want to shake your fist at the sky and say, why are they passing these policies? But there are a lot of things that you can control. I touched on a little bit earlier about making short-term sacrifices in order to achieve those goals. So if your goal is home ownership, there are a few things that you can do. I just think back to my personal experience. Everybody's different. But if there's any lessons that I would take away from my experience when I bought my first home in 2017, I was in a really good spot. And I had a lot of blessings that I can't take credit for. I was able to live at home with my parents while I went through college. So I was able to save my money. So if someone's out there and they're 18, 19 years old, they're thinking about where they're going to go to school. And you're thinking long term about your ability to afford a house in the future. I'd say be thinking about how expensive your college is going to be. Be thinking about those living expenses that you're going to have while you're in college, because you're going to be in college for 4 or 5 years. That's time that you could be taking to save money for the house that you're going to buy when you graduate, when you decide to move. And be careful about taking on too much debt while you're in college too. That's a big problem today. Is a lot of young people have a lot of student debt. Now they may not be making payments on them because of certain deferment programs, but those debts, even when you graduate, if you're not paying them, it's still going to be counted against you when you go to try to get qualified for a house. So you may not be forking over the money to the government to pay those loans back, but it's going to be counted as part of your monthly payments. And so it's going to hurt your ability to qualify for a home loan. And then there's other small things. I saw there was a viral Twitter post a couple weeks ago where someone was saying, if you spend $5 a day on that espresso, at the end of 5 years, you'll have $12,000 saved up. But that's still not enough to afford a down payment. So go ahead and buy that cup of coffee every day. Well, I don't want to judge anybody and their coffee buying habits, but and that's totally fine. You want to do that? That makes you happy. Do it. But those those coffee habits do add up. $12,000 at the end of 5 years. That's a lot of money. You could afford a down payment on a $200,000 house just by saving $5 a day. So be thinking about those little expenses. Those little candy bars at the checkout line at Walmart, or the coffees that you just had to have that day. Is it fair that you have to give up those little pleasures in life just because government policy is making it harder for you to afford a house? Of course not. It's not fair at all. But if you as an individual just trying to better your life and just deal with the circumstances that you find yourself in, there are a lot of things you can do, sacrifices that you can make that'll make it easier on yourself.
Yeah, Tyler Curtis joining us. You ended your piece, by the way, just for full disclosure, I did a VA loan, so I did 1% down, which is a good deal, but you pay for that in other ways that we won't get into right now. That's an earned benefit. You ended your piece with something that I think we need more, not just personally, but in how we report and how we cover finances and the economy. You talked about one of the things about inflation is some of it's just got to run its course. That's not popular. That doesn't get a lot of clicks. That doesn't get a lot of views. People don't want to hear that. But somebody like you that deals with, look, you're doing loans for people for 30 years, half their lives for a lot of these folks. A lot of this stuff, you really do have to be a little patient and understand these are cyclical things, and you got to let them run their course, and don't just hang on every headline when you're making financial decisions. I know people do that. That's probably not helpful. You closed your piece with that, but I think that's a really important piece of advice, especially for young folks, maybe looking to do their first home buying or something like that. Some of this stuff just requires a lot of patience, and that's just not something you hear a lot in the coverage of these types of issues, is it?
No, especially not in politics. Man, listen to any politician being interviewed or in a debate. If an interviewer asked a question about how can we solve problems X, Y, and Z, and the politician answered, well, I don't really have a solution, or there's no government solution. That person probably wouldn't garner a lot of votes. So it's just the incentive structure of politics, of democracy, that you have to have an answer to every problem. You have to say, my policy is going to fix this, and come up with these fancy, 5-year plans. At the end of my second term, we'll have unemployment down to 3%, or whatever it is. We'll have inflation down to where our target is, but that's just not how society works. There's an analogy to be made, I think, with viruses. Sometimes you go to the doctor and they say, you've got this viral issue going on. We can't prescribe you any medicine. It's just got to run its course. You take your ibuprofen to make the pain a little bit less, but ultimately the virus has to run its course. And I think inflation, there are things like what the Federal Reserve has done, raising rates, trying to tamp down on demand, so that we can get inflation down. Those things certainly help, but some of the effects of inflation and the effects of high interest rates, there's no Band-Aid to be put on them. There's no cure out there to make some of these after effects of inflation go away, that just have to run their course. And That's not something that people really want to hear. It's not something that politicians are going to say, but it is true.
Tyler Curtis joining us. He's a banker, but he's not your banker. So talk to your own financial wizards when you go to make these decisions. Appreciate the conversation. I like talking about this stuff because, again, things like economics, there's a lot of big words that I don't understand. But you do economics every day, every time you go to the store. So it's stuff that we need to talk through, and I think this is a good application of it. Let folks know where they can follow you until we get you back on Heard Tell again, where they can find your writing, your social media, and everything you have going on, my friend.
Yeah, you can check me out on Twitter at Tyler Curtis 42. I'm also a contributor at Young Voices. So if you go to the Young Voices website, youngvoices.com, you can find all of my writing there.
Yep. He's got a jaunty picture and a sweater vest, very much looking like a banker.
Yep, very evil.
Very evil banker. Look, bankers are not evil, but there are evil bankers. Do know the difference when you go to see him. Tyler, thank you so much for the time today, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, sir. All right, Heard Tell. Let's end on a good note, although this one's a little bittersweet, but it's a life well lived and it makes me smile. And it's music that has made people happy for many, many years. You know, Tony Bennett, the legendary singer, died about a week and a half ago now as we're recording this. This is by Elise Soleil for the Today Show. Talks his son and his wife talk about his final days and some of their memories. Tony Bennett's son, reading from the piece from today.com, we'll link to it in the Substack notes, shared the final moments he spent with his last fathers. His last words to me were, "Thank you," Danny Bennett said to today's Hoba Katob. Can't say it any better than that. Danny Bennett and Tony's wife, Susan Benedetto, sat for their first joint interview since the singer's death. Danny Bennett is the eldest son, and his former wife, Patricia Beach, who were married from 50 to 70. Their marriage produced sons Danny and Day. The singer was also married to Sandra Grant, who had daughters Joanna and Antonio Bennett. Tony Bennett and Benedetto wed in 2007. The jazz icon won 19 Grammy Awards, died on July 21st, 2023 at the age of 96. And his publicist previously confirmed that Bennett's cause of death is unknown. However, everybody's known since 2021, the musician's family shared that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, form of dementia. According to the Cleveland Clinic, the brain condition causes problems with memories, learning, and gets worse with time. And Danny Bennett told Today that his late dad was, quote, a man of the people, and so we experienced that as a kid, said Danny Bennett, adding that he and his family never took that for granted and that it was an amazing journey. Danny Bennett served as Tony Bennett's manager and helped to expand his popularity to a younger audience, a.k.a. the MTV generation. One of Tony Bennett's frequent collaborators was Lady Gaga. Together, the pair earned 2 Grammy Awards for the 2014 Grammy-winning album Cheek to Cheek and the 2020 album Love for Sale. Danny Bennett told of his dad, he came into my office one time and he said, I was watching MTV. He goes, I think I can do that. And then he walked out and I was like, all right. For those of you that don't know, one of Tony Bennett's real cultural moments, he did MTV's Unplugged. And it's an amazing concert. You can get it on YouTube, other outlets. Go find it. Worth your time. It's actually one of those things I listened to the day he died. I was listening to some of his music. Amazing how that kind of music is timeless, and you can tell it on that MTV special. Go look that up. Back to the Today piece. I put him on those shows that were, 60,000 kids at RFK Stadium between 9 Inch Nails and PJ Harvey, he added. And, it was a little nerve-wracking, but he did great. Danny Bennett shared how his dad was feeling at the time. Quote, he turned to me and said, can I ask you a question? And he goes, do you think Frank Sinatra would do this? And I'd say no. When Tony Bennett was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, said Benedetto, she and Danny Bennett assumed his career would slow down. But Tony's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I want to keep singing. Danny added, we'd take him to the doctor and he'd go, why am I here? Why am I here? We would leave and Tony's like, Susan, I'm really okay. Why do I have to come back? Tony Bennett sang until the end of his life, said Benedetto, adding that the last tune he belted out was Because of You, which was also his very first hit. The music never left him, said Benedetto, sharing his last words to his wife, quote, that he loved me. He would wake up every day and still say that, she said. He woke up every day, happy every day. That's from the Today Show, the legendary Tony Bennett. Go check out that YouTube Unplugged. It's really an amazing thing. When I put Tony Bennett on the TV while I was doing some housework the day he died. I just did the thing where I said, play Tony Bennett, and it pops up the channel, of course, Tony Bennett and other singers like that. And the way those things usually work, as you know, they play a few songs of that person, and then they go to somebody else. I got curious and went and looked at the playlist. This was 4:35 in the evening. I was getting ready to cook dinner, listening to little Tony Bennett. If I would have let that playlist go, it would have been the mid-morning of the next day before it got to a non-Tony Bennett song. That's how amazing and prolific his career was. God bless him and his family. Thanks for the music. That'll do it for Heard Tell. Wherever you are, if you would do us a favor, can you share us on your social media? We don't pay for advertising. It's all word of mouth and what we do on our own social media. You can find us on Twitter or X or whatever Elon's calling it this week, Heard Tell Show. Or you can email us, heardtellshow.gmail.com. Share it that way. Best way to find everything I'm doing, heardtell.substack.com. Completely free to subscribe to that. Gets you everything we do right into your inbox. Please share that as well. We'd really appreciate it. So wherever you are, across the street, around the world, we hope you're well. We hope you are well fed. Can't wait to talk to you again for more Heard Tell.
All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Somos la máquina.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details. When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Folks, if you've listened to the Heard Tell program, you've heard our friend Gabriella Hoffman, but you need to make sure you're checking out her podcast, District of Conservation. It's a podcast exploring the nuances of true conservation efforts from D.C. and beyond. From topic discussions to exclusive interviews with conservation and energy newsmakers, Gabriella keeps listeners appraised of the latest news stories while elevating important voices. Listen to District of Conservation on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are played. Folks, you've heard of Ethan Brown on the Heard Tell Show a couple of different times, but if you're interested in learning about how to discuss things like climate change without all the politics and doom and gloom, head over to his podcast, The Sweaty Penguin. Sweaty Penguin is a late-night comedy-style climate podcast working to add nuance, critical thinking, humor, and hope to the climate conversation. They got over 100 episodes already, breaking down weekly news stories and specific topics, from the vanilla to the ADHD to the international accountability to orangutans. Yes, I know, it's a comedy thing, so just go with it. But each time, exploring different ways we can make progress on these issues while still helping the economy, health, security, and everything else we care about. Feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or excluded by today's climate change discourse? This is the podcast for you. Find The Sweaty Penguin wherever you get your podcasts or at www.thesweatypenguin.com.